almost paradoxical how the size of the world is physically fixed, but in reality varies through the lens of the individual. For some, the world is filled with lifelong comfort and satisfaction. For others, the world only lasts a couple of decades, yet they leave legacies that last for centuries. For some, the world is simply as big as the town they live in, and for others, the world lasts across mountains and seas. Having seen what the world has to offer, we hope that you will learn something from his experience of traveling around the globe. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Gamel.
How would you spend a year? If you could spend it any way you want, what dream would you follow? What adventures would you take? I had the chance to answer this question 7 years ago. After a lot of discussion with my wife, we decided that we wanted to travel around the world for a year. So we took our 2 children, Kara and Tristan. We sold our house. We sold our cars. We quit our jobs. We sold most of our belongings, put what we had left in a 10 by 10 storage unit, and set off for an adventure around the world. What I would like to do today is share some of the lessons that we learned on that trip. Oh, we can't read that. Okay. First lesson that I learned: the world is an absolutely amazing place. In Vietnam, we got into kayaks and would go through caves and find hidden lagoons in Ha Long Bay. I watched the sunrise over the Andes at Machu Picchu in Peru. In Argentina, saw more than 120 waterfalls come together at Iguazu Falls. If you need to know where to purchase a mummified llama because your new building needs it in order to be a safe place, I know where to get it. The Witches Market in La Paz in Bolivia. In Japan, at a Buddhist temple, we had our fortunes told. Unlike most fortune telling, some of these fortunes were bad. Fortunately, if you don't like your fortune, you can fold it up, tie it off on this little stand that they've got set up, and fortune will not come true. Payments are made in advance. In Hoi An, Vietnam, I found the night market, where I had a chance to look at hundreds of paper lanterns lighting up the street. And in Easter Island, I got up hours before dawn, hopped in a car, drove to the other side of the island so I'd be in place to photograph the sunrise behind the Moai. Every trip around the world, or any trip in general, you have to make choices. And one of the choices my wife and I debated about: should we go to New Zealand or Australia? New Zealand won, for 3 reasons. My wife had never been there. On our honeymoon, we went to Australia. She'd never been to New Zealand. I hadn't been since I was a little kid, so wanted a chance to go back. Second reason, it's a lot smaller. You can actually see more in 2 weeks. And the third, by far most important reason, they have Hobbiton. So if you're a fan of The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, I've been to Hobbiton now. I've seen where Bilbo and Frodo Baggins lived at Bag End. Of course, anytime you're on a trip like this with your family, especially with kids involved, you've got to be really, really careful, because if you're not cautious, they'll just eat each other alive. And on these trips, my slides are out of order from what I remember putting in, so one more here. I'm also a teacher, and I believe in traveling around and looking at what other schools are doing. While in England, I had a chance to visit a school that had kind of an arcane curriculum and stuff. They don't even teach chemistry there. So your AP chemistry class, sorry, it just wouldn't have worked. They focus on potions instead. This is the set for Harry Potter, if you don't recognize it. And as I was trying to say before, kids will just start eating each other alive if you aren't careful. Fortunately, as a good parent, I have learned ways to squash these problems when necessary. And sometimes you're just confused while traveling around the world. To this day, I have no idea who this sign is for. Is it for the flamingos, telling them not to fly? If so, someone needs to tell them flamingos can't read. And even if they can, it's faced the wrong way. So if anyone figures out who this sign is for, please tell me. The second lesson, the world is a very large place and a year is not a lot of time. When I started planning, I thought I was going to be able to go everywhere. Okay, a year, I could see it all. No, not even close. Eventually, we settled on visiting 6 continents, everywhere but Africa. My son is still a little upset. He's now touched every continent except Africa. His sister's been on all of them, so she's winning. We started in South America and spent 5 months there, did a short hop down to Antarctica. We spent a month traveling across the South Pacific, Easter Island, Tahiti, and New Zealand. 3 months in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Singapore. Briefly hopped up to Hong Kong and Beijing. Over to Japan, spent 2 days in Japan, and then hopped on a flight and flew out for job interviews in this small little town called Culver I'd never heard of before. Was offered a job, accepted the job, flew back to Japan and kept traveling. Told me I had to be there for summer school. So spent a couple weeks in Japan, flew to Europe, saw Holland, France, ended with England and Scotland. It went fast, 11 months traveling on the road, but we saw a lot. Lesson 3, you do not need a lot of stuff. Before this trip, we actually spent a year living in Costa Rica, and this is all the luggage we took with us for 1 year in Costa Rica. I have helped a lot of Culver students move into and out of rooms, and this is about the same amount of stuff you all bring to Culver for 1 year. Okay? This is how much we took with us for a year around the world. We each had one backpack that was carry-on size, and I have a small computer bag right down there. That's it. You don't need a lot of stuff. There's a big difference between what you need and what you want. They're not the same thing, and learning to recognize that can make a huge difference in your life. Lesson 4, what you remember most are the people. We met a lot of people along the way, and lots of fun stories. I'd like to share 2 examples of that. First one was in Peru, in Cusco. We stayed in Peru for 3 weeks, in Cusco for 3 weeks, and we were in an apartment renting, and our landlady invited us to dinner, to meet her family, have a traditional dinner there. We had a great time. During the conversation, we found out that her husband was an Incan shaman, and he held a traditional ceremony there in the apartment for us, so we would have safe travels on our trip. We went to Cambodia in Southeast Asia. Cambodia is an amazing country. Most people who go to Cambodia go there to see the temples. The temples of Angkor, there are more than 1,000 temples. It is literally a city of temples. And you can go and you can visit all of them. This one, I'm probably going to butcher the name, Tram Pharom is the name, is my personal favorite temple. You go there, it's completely overgrown by trees. But you can go still wander through it and see all the trees. When you need a break, you can make new friends. But the real thing people tend to go there for is Angkor Wat. It's a very famous temple. It's the biggest one. And when you're there, there's something about showing up before the sun rises and getting in position right in front of some water so you can get the pristine solitude of seeing the sun rise over Angkor Wat. I'm going to let you in on a little photographer secret right now. Okay, this nice pristine environment, if you turn the other direction and take the photo, it was not the solitary experience I thought it would be. There were a couple other people who wanted that same picture. But that's not what I remember most about Cambodia. Cambodia is a country that has a very sad history. In 1975, the Khmer Rouge took over Cambodia and ruled until 1979. During that time, 25% of the population was killed. They viewed anyone with an education as dangerous to the new government, and pretty much anyone with more than an 8th grade education was killed. Pretty sure that includes everyone in this room. We would have all been killed. There are museums and such there that you can go, and while we were seeing the temples, I read about one museum, a war museum, that they highly recommended. Every review was glowing review. So I'm like, let's go see it. And my son was very interested in World War II and such at the time. He was 8 years old. So he's, really wanted to go see all this stuff. We went, and they're outdoor huts that have exhibits like this. And they will literally, you want to hold a machine gun? Sure, come over here. They'll let you pick up the machine gun. My son has held a bazooka. Okay, they're not functioning anymore, so that's good. But you can actually go over and pick these things up. They have tanks. If you want to go climb on a tank, this is the place to go. This is not, again, why I remember it. What I remember is our guide. So when you go in, a guide approaches you and gives you a tour of the facilities. This guide was a child soldier. When he was 8 years old, the same age as my son in that picture, he went fishing. And when he came home, his family was gone and he never saw them again. He was trying to survive without his family. He was starving to death. And the only way he could get food is he became a child soldier in the army for the Khmer Rouge. And he fought for them for a number of years until the Vietnamese came in and overthrew the Khmer Rouge and kicked them out. At which point he switched sides and he fought against the Khmer Rouge. During his tour, he told us multiple times he died 12 times. I was trying to figure out what that meant exactly, and eventually realized he was wounded, sometimes badly, 12 different times during that 4-year period. Now, it's one thing for us to hear that someone got wounded. It's quite another when you have this gentleman telling you, I got wounded, and then tells you, hey, feel this. And you feel a bump, and you realize he still has the bullet in his arm. At the end of telling us about all this, very personal stories to him, he pulled up his pants leg. He had a wooden leg. He stepped on a landmine. This made it real to all of us in a way that just reading about or walking through a normal museum does not. So that after visiting this place, we then went to the killing fields. These are mass grave memorials. This is the burial site of more than 40,000 people. It's now a memorial site. You go there and you see things and it looks very pretty. And then you realize what it represents. It's a tree where to save bullets, they would beat children to death with it. There's a horrific history in some places out there. And when we went on our trip, we made the decision not only to see the nice, pretty, fun places. Bad things have happened, and you need to be aware of them and make sure they don't happen again. Another lesson, slightly lighthearted. Okay? Food equals culture. If you want to experience another place, you've got to experience the food. And oh wow, did we experience the food. All over. Food is so good. My son, before we left, mac and cheese was the only food he would eat. On this trip, he'd grab crabs and stuff, playing around, he'd eat anything. Get back, mac and cheese is the only thing he would eat. So, he's a much better eater now. But we ate lots of food, lots of places. In Bangkok, Thailand, we ate at a fancy restaurant on top of a skyscraper looking out over Bangkok. We did not do that often. We couldn't afford it. Much more frequently, we ate street food, or in this case, boat food. This is the Mekong Delta in Vietnam. She's serving breakfast sandwiches. Your boat just pulls up, she serves you a sandwich. Empanadas at small family-owned restaurants in South America. We visited a lot of markets to buy fresh food. In Japan, I love sushi. So it's my family. We would go there, and they have sushi places that have little conveyor belts running around. And when you see something you like, you just grab it. And you can go ahead and eat it. So there's a lot of fun eating, no language problems at all. At the end of the meal, you stack your plates. Different colored plates cost different amounts. They have a scanner. They literally stack them, and they give you your bill. I'm only slightly embarrassed to say, these are all my plates, not the family's. And when it comes to food, my absolute favorite place on our trip is Bariloche, Argentina. Bariloche was settled by the Swiss in Argentina. On every single corner in Bariloche, there is a chocolate shop. And they are all amazing, and I can personally attest that I've eaten at every single one of them. And I recommend you do too. Lesson number 6, experiences over things. When you are traveling and you each have a backpack that's this big, you can't buy souvenirs. They don't fit. I was like, wow, that's a neat t-shirt. Which shirt am I gonna get rid of so I can fit this one in? So you tend to focus on experiences you can have. One of the experiences we had was going to the Amazon. Most people think of Amazon, Brazil, but actually the Amazon's in 9 different countries in South America. When we were in Bolivia, we went down into the Amazon basin. We went out in a boat. On the way out, we met some monkeys. They clearly have been fed frequently. When the boats show up, they climb out of all the trees. And we stayed in the forest for 3 days camping out. We had a guide. He would take us out, show us all about the forest. He would make swings out of the vines for the kids. This was our sleeping arrangement, mosquito netting on top of bark beds. The kitchen. And when you're in the Amazon, what do you eat? Piranha. They're big down there. They're about this large. And they are delicious. Of course, once again, you gotta be careful, Lord of the Flies situation if you don't keep your handle on the kids. Another destination we went to in Peru, we went to Huacachina, an oasis in the middle of sand dunes. One of the things to do is go hiking up the sand dunes. And when you get there and look out, you feel like you're in the Sahara. Of course, the fun of hiking up is you get to run down as fast as you can. We also went on dune buggy rides through the dunes, but the most fun was learning to sandboard. Just like snowboarding, but across the sand dunes. My son is the only one who figured it out. I would either stand there and fall over seconds after steady or just not move. Never did get it to work. I can't snowboard either, so that's probably part of the reason. The very end of our trip, I thought was fittingly in Scotland. My wife's family is from Mexico, and my kids grew up in Texas, so they have a lot of experience with Mexico and her family. My family is from Scotland, and so it was kind of neat to be able to share that aspect of the culture with them. And of course, if you're going to Scotland, you have to go to Loch Ness. And what are you looking for when you're at Loch Ness? You're looking for Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster, absolutely. And if you look really carefully, every now and then you can find Nessie. Traveling around the world for a year was an amazing experience. Of course we were concerned. We getting in trouble with our jobs. Homeschooling our kids for a year, was it going to work out? Yes and yes, it all worked out. We saw some amazing things, got to go to places I probably will never get to go to again. We participated in customs and cultures all around the world. Here, purifying ourselves before going into a Shinto shrine in Kyoto. But probably the biggest thing for me was I got to spend time with my family for a year. And we have a shared adventure we will always remember. So I'd like to end this with asking the question I asked at the very beginning. If you had a year, how would you spend it? What dream would you follow? What adventure would you go on? Thank you very much.